I know what you're thinking, and it's not, did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Because tell you the truth, I kind of lost track in all this excitement. No, what you are thinking is, hey, I thought the Mighty Dash was in St. Louis. What's it doing in Ketchikan? Well, this is not the Mighty Dash. This is actually the Mighty Dash's better-looking younger sister, the Mighty Dish. And the Mighty Dish is heading on her usual route from beautiful Ketchikan, Alaska here up to Juneau on a beautiful day for flying, an anomalously, strangely, weirdly beautiful day for flying. Here, relatively clear skies and smooth sailing, we hope, for our journey, which we are going to make once again entirely on Blue Needles. In other words, we're going to be doing it VOR to VOR instead of using this route here that we've programmed into the FMS. Now it echoes the route that we've taken on the FMS, and this is a route that actually came from FlightAware for a flight that got up to Juneau a few hours ago. Of course, it was flown on a ATR 72, which means we are going to make the trip at a higher altitude, and we are going to do it much, much faster, not to mention in greater style. Let me show you the route right now. It is this. We are going to take off from runway 11 here in Ketchikan. We're going to fly an obstacle avoiding SID here. That'll climb us up to 5,000 feet and take us in the direction of this VOR here in Annette Island, at which point we will make a right and fly out on the J502 airway, go through this VOR, make a 2-degree turn to the left, and continue on the airway until we get to Sisters Island, which is really the entry point for our approach. We will fly probably this approach here, which is, it's called an LDA instead of an ILS approach because it, even though it uses the tools of an ILS approach, it is not lined up with the runway, so it will leave us off at a higher ceiling, and we will proceed from there to make a slight circling approach here onto runway number 8. And it is a beautiful approach. And if the weather starts to get iffy, I think there is a GPS approach we can switch to in case we have to, an RNAV approach, which I think the last time we did it left us, yes, it takes us considerably more to the left, but our minimums are much less. They're 1,900 feet instead of, I think, 2,300 feet, which will put us in a little bit better shape to land. All right. With that said, let me show you what I did here with respect to the radios. I've plugged the frequency for our first VOR in nav1, our second in nav2, our third in the standby for nav1, and our fourth and final in standby for nav2. I may change that around. This is actually the localizer frequency for runway 8 in Juneau. I may switch that over to nav1 at some point, but at the moment, there it shall stay. And let us just quickly get our weather before we get going. It is favorable winds. We're taking off on runway 11, 2990. We're set, and let's just quickly check Juneau. Cloudy. Now here we go. No wind. And looks like we've got... Oh, we've got a high overcast, but nothing down below. And decent pressure. I don't know whether that's rising or falling, but it's decent for now, and it probably means it's not in the center of a storm, which is always a good thing. So let's get out of here real quick. Do our quick pre-flight. I've already done our emergency and so forth checks. Turn on our lights, turn off our bleeds, turn our exterior lights to red to warn people we're going to be starting our engines. Engine start is in the normal position, and our auto feather check's already been done. Turn our steering off and call for a push. Just see what's behind us here. We've got the Alaska plane, and that... Alright, we'll be clear of that. So we can push nose left. You do that by, you know what, before we do that, while we're still sitting here, let's just check our gear pins, and they are in the basket, so that's good. Can always screw you up. And the other thing we'll do is, before we even get moving, just get our panels set up the way we like them, and you can do that. I've assigned a key to popping them up. Okay, that's in the right place. We've set our V-speeds, by the way. Take this big monster here, move it over here. That's going to come in handy when I use the HUD, so I can still refer to my torque settings. And everything else appears to be okay, so we'll call for that push. Services, pushback, nose left.
Ground, we are ready for pushback.
We are ready now, please release parking brake.
Okay, off comes the brake. Start select goes to 2.
Brakes released.
Pushing back now, you're clear to start the engine number 2.
So we start it, come down here, move that up to start and feather, monitor our pushback to make sure we don't hit the 737. Although we just hit the jetway, that's no good. That should stand us in good stead, having clipped the jetway. Parking brake can come back on.
Parking brake set. Can we get clearance at number 1?
The tow is free and clear of nose gear. Clear to start the engine number 1. Have a nice flight.
So we start 1. And up it comes. We have narrowly avoided the 737. That was, I have to say, the world's worst push. Entirely my fault. Could have a lot to answer to when I get back here. Pop our bleeds on. Bring number 2 to max. Actually, I can bring number 1 to max too, because it is stable. Everything's in the green. Turn on our pumps and our auxes. Watch as the props come up. Most of our other cautions go out. We'll turn all of our heats on, our pitot heat and our windshield heat. And that's a good. Turn our steering on. Make sure our side window demists are on because it gets cold and misty here, that's for sure. Set our takeoff trim. That beeping is when the trim is in motion. Set our takeoff flaps. Set our rudder trim. Give us about 10 notches right. Turn our radar on. And take a quick look around, see that 5,000 is set, Altcel is set. We're going to fly initial heading of 115 on this SID until we get to how many hundred feet? Until we get to 1,200 feet, then we're going to turn right to 180 and we're going to intercept the 147, the 327 inbound. We're going to, it is a QDM, I think as they say in Europe, of 147. That's the bearing to the station if there were no wind. And if we were flying out, it would be a QDR of 327. And the only way I can remember it is by saying QDM for moving towards the station and QDR for really, are we done with it yet? But that's just a stupid mnemonic. I'm sure there's a legitimate mnemonic. In the meantime, we are going to head out to runway 11 and start flying. I'm going to leave my bleeds on max for a moment just because I'm going to clear our windows and keep them clear as long as possible. I'll bring them back to min before we take the runway along with the rest of our before takeoff checks. And as you can see here, this is a very funky airport. We're going to taxi uphill here. It doesn't seem to affect the amount of power required. So it looks like a hill and it acts like a hill when it comes to altitude here. You can see our altitude will climb. What it does not do, however, is seem to act like a hill physics-wise. So poor Isaac Newton would be very disappointed. He probably thought he was getting an inclined plane out of the deal here, but instead he is not. So we seem to be taxiing upwards and onwards just fine, using about the same power settings you would use to taxi on level ground. I don't pretend to know how they fake sloped things in Prepared or Flight Sim, but I do know at least it looks fine. I mean, it's, let's face it, it's a pretty cool airport, that's for certain. It bumps like a hill. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. At any rate, we'll check our approach and see that it's clear. We will stop here for 1 second. We'll hold at the hold short line. Quickly jump on the brakes. Turn off our bus tie. Turn off our APU. Turn on our white anti-collision lights. Turn on our approach lights. Bring our bleeds to min. Don't have to turn them off. Turn on our logo light because we're proud of Pan Am. Quickly check everything else. Pop our spoilers into flight. Turn off our gust lock and take the runway. So again, we're going to be flying runway heading 115 until 1,200 feet. And then we're going to turn right to 180. We'll check our heading, see that it squares up. And I believe, unless I'm mistaken, what we will do is on this climb out, we'll actually blow through the radial and then come around and grab it from the other side. But let me double check. 147. All right, I'm about to get situationally unaware, but let's just fly this thing and see how it shakes out. Going to go around mode. Walk the power levers up till they're stable. They are. And smoothly advance them to the index. And there's 80. And looking for 115. And there it is. And there we go. So we're going to fly runway heading. And you'll have to excuse me, gear up. And flaps up. You'll have to excuse me if I fumble this just slightly, because I fly with a joystick with my right hand and I use my mouse with my right hand. So I'm going to try and spin this heading bug over. Okay. We're going to turn to 180. So I'm bring our props back. And then we will intercept the 147. Just get our heading bug here spun around. There we are. Just shallow out our climb and accelerate a bit. And bring ourselves in on the 147. And the restriction is 5,000 or above, so the fact that I'm just a little bit sloppy on that, or a lot sloppy, should not have any bearing. Ourselves out a little bit though. And in a second, get ourselves squared away here. Put ourselves in altitude hold mode. if this turns us and captures the VOR. Now we see that we have been cleared up to our cruising altitude now. So let's head on up. Flight level 240 today. Bit of a sloppy departure, my apologies. Just retrim a little bit here, the rudder. And bring the power up. And we will first climb in vertical speed mode. And then we will transition to IAS mode. Okay, so we're coming up on the station, and what we have to do next is we have to track outbound on the 308. So I'm going to pop us into heading select mode right now. And we're going to come around right to probably, it's going to be a little bit more than 308 because we're going to have to re-intercept. And I'm going to spin our nav course to 308 and see where that leaves us. We're right now practically over the station. Okay. And our needle is flipped and we're heading away, which is good. And maybe we'll intercept it cleanly, but I think we're going to have to re-intercept it just a touch. It's one of the little idiosyncrasies of active sky next. All of a sudden a clear sky turns into a cloudy day, but there you have it. And while we're at that, just as we're fixing to re-intercept here, I'm going to turn off our junk and we'll just set up for an intercept here. And we should be cutting across it any second now. Pop us into IAS mode. That's a nice speed to climb at. So right now we're a little to the southwest of the station, or southwest of the radial. We're already 6 miles past it. Let's take a bigger cut at it here. Now you notice what I'm not doing is I'm not looking at our I'm not looking at our magenta line. I will in a second, just for curiosity's sake. And I'm going to wait for that needle to start to move before I pop us into a nav holding mode, only because there we go. Okay, so into nav hold we go, and watch the airplane turn and grab it. I don't know how smartly the real plane does this, but this one seems to do not too bad. coming up on standard altimeter, land. We do anything else, turn our bleeds to normal, and we can let our passengers stand up, turn our approach lights off and our logo lights off, and we're good to go there. So now we're flying out this way, and we're going to be flying to Level Island, and we're going to be flying inbound 128. And the really cool thing about this is, let me just very, very quickly pop us into heading select mode just for 1 second so you can see. As we set standard altimeter, pop us in heading select mode, and what? Oh, hang on. I'm an idiot. That's what you get for not squaring up your heading bug. Let me just get reestablished here. See what I mean? So let's just get us back on course, and then I'll show you the neat trick. The neat trick I showed you right there was how to do something stupid. I've got a million varieties of that. So as we cut back into our VOR, as we're getting reestablished there, let me just quickly crank down our IAS climb speed so we climb a little more steeply. So we're flying outbound from Annette Island, and we're flying to Level Island inbound 128, which I believe is the QDM in Europe. We call it the heading 2 here. But all right, we'll square up the heading bug, put us in heading select mode, and I'll show you the neat trick. I asked myself as I tuned the other one in the standby for nav into the nav 2 here, what well, I'd have to do that, I have to tune it in, I have to pop it back up, then I'd have to set a new course. But in fact, it turns out that if we set ourselves in heading mode, you see there's nav 1, and it's drawing from nav 1 as the source. If we flip it over to nav 2, you see it's got a course set up already. We've set it, and it'll stay there. We want to come in, fly inbound on the 128 radial. Actually, what we really want to do is we want to fly to the 308 inbound, so let me just set that right now. So set the course for that to 308. Alright, that's good. It differs ever so slightly from, pulling my props back here, differs ever so slightly from the track we're on. And somebody who knows more than I do can explain that better than me, why that would be the case. It shouldn't be. They should line up almost perfectly. But anyway, for the moment, let's just track outbound for a little while longer. Here on Ann Island, our heading is deviated just about 7 degrees, and I suspect that's to correct for the wind. And we've got a little ice, so we'll take care of that. And before we do that, let me just make sure we put ourselves back in nav mode. And we are tracking outbound on 308, and we are, and we just grabbed our altitude and we're good. So on comes the ice protection. And because we're well in range of the next station, we'll put ourselves in heading mode briefly. Turn the nav source to nav 2. Put ourselves back in nav mode. And grab that radial. And let's see how icy we are. Nothing too big there. Let's see if we have any on our wiper. Nope, nothing there. Everything else looks copacetic. Our alternate is going to be Anchorage today, so we took on a little bit of extra fuel, and as you can see, it's a little bit unbalanced, so I'm just going to cross feed a little bit from the right to the left. And now we're a little bit happier there balance-wise. And what I'll do is we'll set our next station into nav 1, and we just adjust our heading ever so slightly to the east. Pop us into heading select mode for 1 second and quickly check we want to come into Sisters Island at 124. So, Sisters Island is 114.0, and our course for that will be 124. Put ourselves over to nav 1 and set our course to one, 2, 4. Back to nav source 2, back into nav mode. Now, when we get to Level Island here, we're going to make a 2-degree turn to the left, and we're going to adjust our outbound course to be 1, 2, 6. No, it's actually, we're going to be on 306. We're going to fly that outbound. I'm probably doing this wrong. I do know it gets the same results, but I'm absolutely sure I'm doing something wrong. So if anybody can weigh in on the subtleties of when to fly outbound and when to fly inbound, and how to set up an HSI correctly, I'm all ears. We're cruising comfortably. Set our landing elevation, which is practically nothing. Set it at 500 feet so we're depressurized by the time we come down. And we got no ice. Get rid of that. Turn off our heater. Get rid of that. And let's check out our descent. We need to come down to 5,600 by Sisters. No, I'm sorry, by Linz. So Linz is here. And let's see, we've got 4,000 feet of terrain, 3,700 feet of terrain all around here. And our MSA within 25 nautical miles of this beacon here is 6,500, probably because of this stuff right all around here. Just to give us a little bit of margin. So we have to come down to 5,600, so we have to come down 18,000 feet and change, and we have to do it in let's see, how far do we have to level island? 34. 34 plus 127, 130. We got 160 miles, give or take, to get down to, I think, about 6,000. So we're fine. So to get down to 6,000 feet from 24, 18, we need 60 miles to do it. So we need to do it about 10 miles here, plus 32, that's 40. So we need to do about 32, 45, about 45 miles before, make it 50 miles before Sisters Island, and that's when we'll start our descent. And 50 miles before Sisters, okay. And we are barreling in here on Level Island, you see right here, and you can see we're right on the magenta line, more or less, ever so slightly deviated. And that is flying the good old Blue Needles. All right, given that they're, well, you know what? Let's take us across the transition here from Level Island, and then we'll cut the video and pick it up closer to top of descent. I'm going to turn our ice protection back on. And in the meantime, see if there's anything to see here. Nope, nothing. Okay. This tends to be a little bit paranoid, but in this case better paranoid than iced over and falling out of the sky. And as you can see, we are now on our FMS track, even though we are not using the FMS to fly it. So navigating okay. And what we're going to do is, when we hit the station, we're going to fly outbound from the station on the 306 radial, and that will continue the J502 airway. you a look at what it looks like outside. That's not too bad. That is some beautiful stuff, especially when you get down lower. This is Orbx Alaska Fjords in southern Alaska. We're coming through. Not too shabby there. Rex textures and texture direct and active sky next for the weather. And the Mighty Dish, as the Mighty Dash sits in St. Louis for the next leg of its round the world adventure, which will be Buffalo first, then Montreal, then Halifax, Nova Scotia, and then on the way across the Atlantic. And we are looking for the arrival of Level Island VOR, the crossing of it. Remember, it's slant range, and we are up a little less than 5 miles. 4 miles and change. So this is going to flip when we're above it. It'll get confused for a few minutes, then pick up again. But we'll fly a heading. And that magenta enunciation means that we're coming up on an FMS waypoint, but we're not using an FMS waypoint. Okay, so here comes the flip. So we will pop us into heading select mode and fly outbound. And it's going to be a little bit more. We're going to have to turn a little bit more than to 306 because there's wind pushing us back in that direction. So as we do that, we'll adjust our course to 306 and wait for it to come alive again and then re-intercept it. Now you see as we get further away, the slant angle will get greater and these numbers will count up faster. But when you're almost immediately over it, your angular momentum away from it, your angular speed, is not very great. So we're just looking for the flip, and there it is. And now look at that, we almost perfectly got it there with the wind. Let's give it a little bit of a correction and just capture that up nice. There we are. Alright, so again, that is this we just crossed over, and we're flying out on the 306, and we're going to take this to Sisters Island, and about 50 miles out from Sisters Island we're going to start going downwards. And long before that we will tune this in and fly inbound on the 304. We're flying inbound on the 124 radial, and so we're going to fly a course of 304. And what I'll do is we'll pick it up closer to top of descent here and see in a bit. Pretty fine, huh? We are making our way towards Juneau from Ketchikan over the beautiful Alaskan fjords, and we are about 50 miles short of Sisters, which means we are going to start our descent. Our passengers have been told to sit down, And we are going to drop ourselves into a vertical speed mode here. Roll off the power. And head on down. We're tracking inbound to Sisters Island, at which point we'll make a right-hand turn to about, I think, 007. Just retrim our rudder first before I do anything else. And 006, I'm sorry. 006, actually for the, well, either one is no procedure turn, okay, from the direction we're coming in, so we don't have to fly outbound and do this. So we'll make a slight right turn in a moment. What I'm going to do right now is very quickly put us in heading mode again, and I'm going to set our approach course, which is 071, which is offset from the runway. This is not a precision approach. This is not an ILS approach. This is an LDA approach. Bring a little more power in here. And we can come down at about 1,800 feet per minute. Actually, our ground speed times 5 to get us a 3-degree slope is, let's see, our ground speed is 300 knots times 5 is about 1,500 feet per minute. And let us very, very quickly turn our nav source, make sure we're in heading select mode, square up our heading bug a little bit. There we go, into heading select mode. Flip our nav source very, very quickly, set our approach course to 071. Like so. So you see what we're going to do is we'll be flying up this way. We're going to turn to about here, and that should intercept us very, very nicely onto our LDA. Only our nav 1 is wrong. So let us make that 1099, make that active, and it's not coming in yet because we're too far away. And now we can go back to nav 2, which is correct, 114 to Sisters Island, and pop back into nav mode there. In the meantime, we are icing. And because we're icing, we have our ice protection on. That is cool. And we're looking for 18,000 feet, at which point we will set our altimeter to 2987. Overcast at 12:1, few at 300 feet. So our worst case scenario is that a giant cloud will get right in between us and the runway on an otherwise clear day, in which case we might do a circling approach. But this kind of weather is exactly why Alaska Airlines has a bunch of private RNP, RNAV, GPS approaches that they've created for themselves so that they can always fly in without any difficulty. So 2987 is what we'll set. Done and done. Other thing we'll do is we'll set this beacon here, Coghlan Island, in the ADF to 12 for ADF 1. Pop that up there, and that is pointing to the beacon. And just for academic purposes, even though we're flying on blue needles here, you can see that we are fantabulously perfect on our magenta line, but we're not using it. While I'm at it, set our V speeds here, 117. No additive for the wind, but I'll put in 5 knots for the V-app. And you see there's clearness and then there's low cloud. Our alternate is Juno, and our missed approach is to immediate climbing right turn 310 and re-intercept the Sisters Vortex here and fly back out here. But what we'll probably do is we'll probably loop around this way and start climbing straight out, and then we'll just head to anchorage if we have to. In the meantime, let's check our distance. We've got 21 till 20 till Sisters Island. So that'll bring us down another 6,000 feet. And that'll get us to 9, and we really need to go down a little bit more than that. Because from Sisters to Elephant is 13 miles. So that'll get us down another 4,000 feet. So that'll be 9,000. Actually, you know what? That'll probably get us there, so we don't have to go nuts here. Because we have to go to 5,600 by Linz. And let's see if there's any restrictions. No, there are no restrictions on Sisters. So as long as we stay above 5,600 till Linz, we're good. Now when we get to Sisters, we're going to make a right turn, 7 to 307, and we're going to fly that for 13 miles. And actually, let me set our altitude to 5,600 is where it should be. I'll sell, yes. Turn on our standbys. Turn on our lights. Passengers already seated. Bring our bleeds to min. Leave the anti-ice on for the moment. Head to Sisters, so we'll be down at 7,000 by Sisters, so we should be in very good shape. Did I say 10 by Sisters? We should be more than enough, so let's just level ourselves out. I just did the arithmetic wrong again. And let me just see whether I can preview Nav1 by popping into format. Yes, look at this. So I can look at we can fly Nav2 here and preview Nav1 here. That is spectacular. And we are getting shitty frame rates here. Alright, so when we get to... And look at that, and there's our LDA course. So, in about another scotch, we're going to pop into heading select. I'm going to set that up for 007, which, as you can see, is going to cut us right into our LDA, our localizer. So let's do that now. Struggle to slow down here. We can start to shallow ourselves out and slow down, and into heading select we go, and on to cutting into that. Set our props for reduced noise. Feel the mighty dish start to slow. Bring a little power back in. And we're going to fly this 12.9 miles. Got a little bit of wind blowing us outbound, so I'm going to crank in a couple more degrees to our right. Drop in a notch of flaps. Keep in mind when we fly inbound also our ADF is going to be pointing straight at the NDB with the wind correction, of course, that we'd have to figure. There's our terrain. And there's 5 miles. And it's kind of soupy. Alright, our next altitude constraint is 3,700. We can bring that in. A little slow here. And we can switch over. No, we can't. As soon as we get to about DME 11, we'll switch over to nav 1. And if we did this right, we will start to see this needle. We will see this needle start to move when we get to about 11 and change, maybe 12. Okay, there's our overcast breaking up, but you can see we've got an undercast as well. Alright, and we're about 17 miles, not from the field, but from the end of this LDA localizer thingamajig. And I believe our approach plate is built off of that. Yes, these are all DMEs to that station, which is shy of the runway, you see. Alright, that's starting to come in. We'll flip over to nav 1. We'll hit nav and grab it and start to come down. Bring out our gear. And we did that just a little bit late, but Not too bad. Bring our heading bug around. We blew it by about a half a dot. Not too bad. And down we go. Hey, that was actually pretty good. Okay. We're configured a little bit early, but since I don't know the territory here, I figured it was only wise. So we're 12 miles away from our next altitude restriction, which is, from the end of our run here, 3,700 at Barlow, which is at 9.2. And we're going to get there just fine. And from there, we can go down quite a bit. Put in another notch of flaps. I'm going to fly this level right now, more or less, because this is our missed approach altitude, if I'm not mistaken. And we've arrived a little bit early. Put in our last notch of flaps. And we're looking for the lead-in lights, and we've got low cloud. This might not be pretty. Alright, let's see. Barlow is at 9.2. We're past Barlow. CGL is when our NDB flips, and that's our missed approach point. That is going to be the first of a bunch of lead-in lights, if I'm not mistaken. Right over here. Are we going to have to go scud running? Are we going to be breaking the law here? Ah, I see the lead-in lights. Now, what are the rules if we lose contact with the ground immediately after seeing the ground? All right, let's go visual now and stay legal. Because I think once we get to our missed approach point, if we don't see the ground, then we cannot continue. However, if we can see the ground and maintain contact with the ground now, we can legally fly this. So I'm going to divert around El Scudo here. There's the runway. Okay, well, we can do this. Let's come off the power. Bring our carcasses down. We're going to circle right through this. Look at this. Watch this. Are we smart or what? There's our next set of lead-in lights. Do an S-turn here. Lose some speed. Keep contact with the ground and the runway. And I can still see the runway. I'm going to do another S-turn in a second. Look at this. All right. Bring up the power a little bit. And bring it on home. There are our approach lights. And it is warning about excessive localizer deviation, which is okay. Do another little dipsy doodle here. A little bit of a slip. As we fall out of the sky, just keeping a little bit of power in there.
Plus 100.
Let us drift a little bit more.
Minimums.
And we'll land
Minimums.
ever so slightly long, but not too much.
$100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Bit of a float. A lot of a float. Okay. Long landing. Let's go around. Don't want to futz around with that. This is a right-hand pattern at the airport because of that. So let's not flirt with that. Instead, let us come around and land in the opposite direction. We thought we were so smart, didn't we? Keep below our flap speed for max flaps. We're at 100 feet below pattern. Bring ourselves around sharpishly here. Pull some major G's, and there's the runway. Alright, we'll try and do this one right. There we are. Okay. And there's no wind to speak of right now, so it's okay to do what we just did. But it's kind of silly. I really have no excuse not to grease this. I'm inexplicably off-center, though. There we are. And here we are. Probably a more eventful approach than we needed to have, but that's entirely the fault of yours truly. In any case, we did have our fun, didn't we? We and the mighty dish, and as you can see now, compared to the last time we flew in here, all the terrain is in the right place, and that's because Orbx has updated their southern Alaska terrain region, and this now looks like the beautiful airport that it is. Anyway, we're just going to park over here on a remote stand because there is no parking space at the gate. So with that, as the sun goes down here in Alaska, see you next time.